Hi guys, welcome to my channel. Another painting here for you today. Hope you enjoy this. This is on a canvas. It's actually a size 16.5 by 11.5, like I said, canvas sheet. I'm just layering a nice dark blue on here. You can use any blue you want. I think I'm using a French ultramarine blue here, but any blue you desire. I'm just blocking it in, very choppy as you can see. I want that nice blocky feel to this painting. So this is actually going to be a pond that we're going to put some fish in. So I'm not doing any smooth blends. I'm just doing a nice blocky background. I'm using a flat brush just to start with. I use a few brushes, as you'll see further on in the video. But just to lay the initial blue down, I'm just using a flat brush. Then I use some, like I said, ultramarine blue, French ultramarine blue. Then I go to a darker blue, which is an indigo blue. But you can mix this colour by just adding a bit of black tube blue to darken it. So these are going to represent the actual shadows in the pond. I'm still using that flat brush for the moment. I'm not using thick paint, as you can see. I'm only using a thin application. Because in acrylics, I like to paint thinly because I think it looks nicer. It's different in oil paints. You can build up your thickness and texture in oil paints a bit different to acrylics. So I've dried all that off and I give it a quick glaze with some glazing medium. And I just tinted it slightly with a little bit of blue, dried it again, and I've come in with a flat, stiff bristle brush and added some turquoise. Now I'm putting this, I use this brush on purpose because it lays the paint down pretty firmly and gets it into the canvas weave. Also, with being a nice bristle brush, you can do a nice soft blend, which you see me doing here. Some I want some harsh edges, some I want them a bit softer. So this brush allows me to do that. That's why I use the stiff brush. Same here, I'm just going over and doing another layer, just a bit lighter. Just added a tiny little bit of white, not much. I'm just doing another application. But very little paint, so it goes quite a long way when using a stiff brush. I've dried that off. Now I'm giving it another glaze and it's just tinted slightly with a little bit more blue and a tiny bit of white just to give that misty feel. And dry it off completely again. Now I've gone back to my synthetic brush, and as you can see, what's going on now is a really thin glaze. So I'm just tinting the actual colours with a quinacridone gold. So I've added glazing medium to this and got a really thin layer. Now I've evened that out throughout the canvas and I've dried it off again. Now I'm coming back in with some glazing medium and a tiny bit of blue. So I've really just tinted the glazing medium with a tiny little bit of colour. I'm just going in, as you can see, just soft blending some of them edges. I didn't want that harsh. I like to work in multiple layers and I like to do a lot of glazing. I really think it improves your artwork and I think it looks really nice. Now I've dried it off again and I'm back to my stiff little brush, but any brush you're comfortable with just to make a few splatters, that's entirely up to you. But I'd like the little stiff brushes for this. I'm just using that turquoise colour that I put on at the beginning. Then as I go on, I add a little bit more white just to brighten it up slightly. I think this looks really cool as a background as well. Dab off any big blobs you didn't want, obviously, before they dry. Now I've dried that off properly and I've drawn the composition of my fish on top with just a chalk pastel pencil. I'm blocking in the lily pads. I'm just using a brown and a purple just to get a nice blocked in colour. So I'm not over worried about the values yet. I just wanted to cover up the background and get all my shapes in. I'm just using a nice dark neutral colour. You can actually use mix yellow and purple together. That gives you a nice earthy brown as well. And I put a little flower, little lotus flower in the middle. I think the lotus flowers, because I thought that looked really cool for the composition and the fish going around the outside. I'm blocking this fish in here with just a nice lavender lilac colour. It's just purple, white and a bit of French ultramarine blue. As you can see at the bottom, I put a bit of shadow there because it will be shadowed underneath to make them look round. We want that 3D effect, obviously. This one's a bit small at the top because it's further away. But remember to get the shadow on your fish, like I've done here. Now come back to the lily pads. I'm just putting some more of that purple on. I'm doing it in a nice loose feel because I want the fish more detailed than the actual pond or the lily pads. And to me, I think it makes it, that brings the artwork together and makes the fish the actual focal point by doing the lily pads a bit of a looser style painting and then putting a bit more detail onto your fish. So same here, I'm just adding a bit more of that green colour now. It's just a nice tinty green on them. And I've gone back into the flower. I'm adding some yellows and some purples. I'm not going too bright with it yet. So I'll let all that sit and dry off and I'll come back to my fish. I've got some off-white here. It looks quite bright, but I've mixed it with some blue. I'm using the corner, the actual edge of the little angle brush that I'm using, just to dab on like the scale effects of the fish and then come into a nice orangey red to put the actual markings on. So plan out how you want your fish markings because they're all different and they don't have to be the same shapes, obviously. They're all different styles of fish. Same here, I'm just using a nice dabbing motion. I'm not smoothing anything out, but I'm only using little paint and just dabbing it on. It's more visual texture than anything. You can't really feel the texture, if you know what I mean. It's not bumpy. So do the same on all these three fishes. Obviously the light source is looking down on them, so it's going to really reflect more on top of the fish, on the back of the fish. Same here with this nice reddy colour, reddy orange colour. Just get them all nicely blocked in before we do any shading. I hope you enjoyed this, guys. If you do, please leave us a thumbs up. And I do have other fish in my playlist if you want to look through my playlist or just scroll through my videos. There might be something else that interests you there as well. I've dried that off and I've gone a bit lighter with a bit of a lighter orange. So it's still got red in and a bit of cadmium orange. It's just a lighter value. Remember to keep them dark shadows. As you can see here, I'm darkening them up again with that French ultramarine blue. I'm just making sure I've got all my values correct. Forget his little fins. And fish are always fun to do, aren't they? I think they're a really cool subject to paint. Any type of fish, I think they're really a good subject. I like painting fish. So now that's dry, I've gone a bit brighter again with a brighter orange. So it's less red and just more orange and a tiny little bit of cadmium yellow. Same method again, just little dots, little dabs. And make sure you keep them dark values in. So go back into your dark mixture, you know, your dark red colour that you had, that I put on the base. And I've gone a bit brighter white here. Now for this, you could use a pearl white if you've got that and you fancy using some of it up if you haven't used it for a while. I've just used normal titanium white, but I think a nice pearl sheen or pearlescent white look cool as well. You'll get that nice shimmy effect, pearlescent. I'm not doing him as bright at the back of this fish because his head's actually poking out the water, but his body is under the water. Another layer on his fins and just putting his little mouth in. I'm putting the scales on as well on the dark bits, don't forget that, because obviously they would be there, but don't go too bright because they're in the shadowed area. And just darken that bottom bit of the fish again. Now I've gone in with pure cadmium orange here, which is a really beautiful colour, just for the highlights. And to get that highlights I've done there on the white bit of the fish on top, I've just made the dots a lot closer together. And that'll build up a natural highlight. Just checking my dark values, keep checking yourself, make sure you've got, you haven't painted over them. If you have, go back in. It's all about your values, not necessarily colour, but it is about values when you're painting. Just doing some watermarks around that lily pad there and giving these another layer of purple and a bit of green. Like I said, I don't want these too obvious because I want the fish to be the focal point, but they still need a bit of coloration. So just a nice soft green and a nice sap green colour, a bit of turquoise and purple. I thought it really looked cool. Plus it was in keeping with the actual background that we created at the beginning of that's the fish pond. Nice peachy colour here again for this lovely flower in the centre. Another layer. I had a bit of that on the lily pads as well. So you can see on the second fish, I'm just putting some dark red in there just to make sure you've got them nice dark shadows in. And then I'm bobbing the highlights on him as well, using that orange again, that nice cadmium orange. And to get it nice and super bright, just add a tiny bit of yellow, but don't go too mad with the yellow because it can wash it out just slightly. You want more of it to look orange, you know what I mean? And the same again, same principle with the whites as we did on the big fish. Emphasize them little water lines on your lily pads. They're just floating there on the top, so there would be a water line. Now I put a few bubbles here because he's actually coming to the surface. So they've got the little noses at the top of the water. I thought I'll put some little bubbles in. Maybe they're waiting to be fed or they've had, been eating something. They're just having a good time. Last few coats on the lotus flower with the yellow and orange. And same on the lily pads with a touch of green. I'm just fleeting some turquoise over now. Everything's dry. Now it's just a thin layer of some watermarks just to make sure the fish look underwater where I want them to look underwater, like further down the body and the tails. And that will give the illusion that they are actually in the water. I'm just using my liner brush here just to get some little details in around the lily pads. And bob 2 highlights there, that nice lavender colour. It's beautiful, that purple. It looks really nice next to orange. I'm just darkening that centre slightly, just to make the orange pop out in the flower. A few highlights around my bubbles. A few more watermarks with that liner brush. Thanks guys, I hope you enjoyed it. I really enjoyed painting this for you. Leave us a thumbs up as well if you enjoyed it. On screen now are 2 videos you may like to watch, and if you're not already subscribed, click on my face and be sure to click the icon bell to get a notification. As always, thanks for watching and create something wonderful. See you all soon on my next video.